Okay, welcome to the first episode of my podcast about my album House Share, or really I should say track 1, because I'm going to talk about each tune in my 20-track album. So hopefully my podcast will be a 20-episode series. Well, that's the plan anyway. Let's see how this one goes, because I've never tried to talk about one of my tunes before. Right, so I started madeUpmusic because I am an old raver. I used to DJ a little bit, but really I was more of a promoter and raver. I just loved the vibe. We had been living in dark times, so it seemed back then. We lived with the threat of nuclear war, and then AIDS came along, and Thatcher was like seemingly destroying everything we'd believed in up until that point. And then rave came along and it was like a ray of sunshine. Yes, I know there's lots of other things that made it great, and that was great too, but it really was a fantastic buzz. It was underground in the beginning, and you really did feel like you were part of a group of movement of like-minded people. And one of the things I did like about the rave music in those days was the upbeat sounds and the different sounds. I mean, we were listening to things like Jimi Hendrix and Velvet Underground and Rolling Stones and The Cure and The Smiths and Madness and all kinds of bands back then, because the people I hung out with, we already kind of, thought differently than, say, the pop-loving people. If you nothing wrong with pop, but we were really listening to sort of like protest bands, and I suppose we were almost punk-like in a way. Into the indie stuff. I mean, I've seen sort of Clash and UK Subs and Buzzcocks and I can't even remember how many people. And so we were into a mishmash of music, loved all sorts of stuff, blues, all sorts of stuff, anything that was good. I mean, even genres of music I don't like, there are the best of that genre you can like, because it's well made. Anything that's good, anything well made, I think you can appreciate, even if it's not your favourite thing. So that's what we were experiencing, and those sort of tunes were, how can I put it? I mean, they could be quite depressing in some ways. I mean, I know people used to think the Smiths were depressing, but I used to find it hilarious. I mean, Johnny Marr's tunes were really upbeat, really, and the lyrics from Morrissey I thought were hilarious. I thought it was fun. But Talking Heads brought out a tune, or an album rather, called Little Creatures, and that was the first time really that I'd heard an album that was all upbeat. I mean we were into things like New Model Army, or or even the punk tunes. It's there. I mean, we were into bands, and like New Model Army or what have you, and you have different tracks, you have things going up and down. It's hard for me to explain, I think, but when I first heard a rave, and of course all the music's mixed, it doesn't stop, so you're not having that break in the music like you did from a band, or even when you went to a disco. I mean, the record would stop and the next record would begin, and you had that sort of break, whereas with rave, it just went on all night. And of course, the DJs were making up something as they went along. By mixing different tunes together, they were creating a mood. So it was different. It was like something you'd never heard before. And obviously, the vibe at these things were great. You couldn't stay out late back then. Most music venues closed at 1 if you were lucky. And when you were younger, you wanted to just stay out longer. So these raves, these illegal raves, or free parties, as we ended up going to a lot more of free parties and raves. I think the main difference, a rave was usually somewhere that you would pay. So they might have taken over a club and played, like a discotheque, and it would be turned into a rave at night, so it'd all be dance music. But free parties tended to be out in the woods or in a field, in a barn, in a warehouse, and so they were cool. They were just fun. They went on all night, especially if you could get away with it. Even the ones where the police turned up, usually they went on until 7 in the morning, and yeah, it was just fun. And the best thing about a rave or a free party was that people went there to have a good time. It wasn't about getting drunk and starting a fight. It was about having a good time and dancing. You didn't get that thing where everyone was stood around the edge. Well, when I say everyone, when the blokes were stood all the way around the edge of the dance floor just staring at the girls dancing. Just everyone was having a good time. And that was the vibe. And of course, the music was uplifting. I mean, a lot of it was in a minor chord, and it would have like a sort of bittersweet sound to it. So it'd be uplifting with maybe a little bit of a mournful vocal, and I mean, a lot of the best tunes for me, there was, would be a female vocal. Half the time you couldn't really tell what they were saying, but it was more the emotion that was attached to it. And that's kind of what I wanted to create with this album that I decided to make, called House Share. It's called House Share because it's house music, and I'm not really good at thinking up titles for things, so there's about 20 tracks in this album, and they've all got house in it somewhere because it was just easy to think of house names. So my first track of the House Share album's called My House, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Now, My House is a strange track because it's the first track that I created. I think it was after about 2 years. So it was the first track I created after 2 years of trying to figure out how to use Logic Pro, which is a DAW, which stands for Digital Audio Workstation, I think, but a piece of software you use on a computer to create music. So with these DAWs, you can play musical instruments into them, or you can use MIDI. And MIDI is like a placeholder for notes or sounds. So someone like me who can't play an instrument, well, I've not learned to play an instrument, so I don't know how to play an instrument at the moment. I expect if I took the time to learn it, I could probably learn an instrument. So I decided to take the time to learn how to use Logic Pro so that I could then use lots of different instruments, which is what MIDI allows you to do. So you can put a placeholder for a note on your computer and tell it to be a drum or a guitar note or a singer's note or whatever sound you want, and then you can turn that into a song. And it sounds reasonably easy, and to some extent it is quite easy to get a sound out because there's lots of pre-made sounds, and you can just choose them and it will make, sometimes some of them will make a melody for you. And a lot of people use samples, so someone's already put a sample together and you can just lay those in layers and it will make a song. I chose not to go that route, so I tend to use MIDI and I make up my own drum loops and all sorts. I don't know, I think more out of respect for real musicians, because one of the things I think is really important is respecting the work that other people do that have got a real talent. Like there's all the songs that we know, I'm not going to name them, but all those songs that have meant something to you in your life, someone has created that. They've got a talent, so they've learnt to play an instrument, they've studied music, and they've created something that we feel is beautiful, and that deserves respect. So I know that I'm not going to be able to learn all that now. For a start, I've left it a bit late. I'm not rich, I can't afford music lessons and I haven't got the time for it. So I decided just to teach myself to use Logic Pro after work and any weekends, any free time. And I wanted to see if I could make a nice tune. A dream would be to see a room full of people enjoying and dancing to one of my tunes. That was the aim. Plus, it also gives me something to do. So off I went. Anyway, after 2 years, I created this house tune. Now, I started off trying to create trance tunes. Now, that is pretty tricky. I mean, all of it's tricky, really, when you don't know. But I suddenly stopped trying to do trance tunes because I realised that with trance, there's a lot of audio engineering that goes on. And audio engineering or production is like unbelievably big, large, complicated, whatever you want to call it. And it is absolutely essential to probably all music, but definitely to dance music. It's amazing what a tweak of a knob or some kind of switch movement or frequency change will make to a song. And I haven't got a clue on any of this. This is like, I'd probably spend the rest of my life trying to figure this out. But as I've called this channel madeUpmusic, because I am, totally making it up as I go along. I listen to people. I've got friends who have got talent and they give me tips and I try it out. I don't always understand what they're saying, but I try and move the slider this way or turn the knob that way, and see what happens. I realised that it was such a big subject trying to get trance to work. And I suddenly just one day decided to do house. I love house, and I think house is more in my blood because of the way things are laid out. So, obviously each genre has a pattern, if you like, the way it's arranged. Otherwise it wouldn't be a genre. So I had to go at house, and this was the first one that I made. And what was funny was that in the middle of this tune, it almost turns into a trance tune. I mean, there is a proper trance pattern and build-up in it, which I'm a bit sorry that I used it on this house, and maybe I should have used it in a trance tune, but there you go, it's in this. And also I discovered that I had some female vocal samples, and I dropped a few of those in, which was the sort of first time I'd used these. And as I said before, I love those emotions that vocal, that female voice used to bring to the tunes. I don't know if it's because I'm a man or if it's just because the female voice has got that nice timbre, that nice sound. Maybe some ladies could comment and tell me if they like it or not. But anyway, I like female voice. I like ladies. I think. Carole King, what a songwriter. I could go on. There's some amazing songwriters and singers that are women, and there's some good ones that are blokes as well, but, I like the ladies. Anyway, so I started dropping some of these in, and then I hit on a nice bass line, and I absolutely love piano in house tune. You can't have house without piano riff in it, can you? Anyway, so I bashed about with my piano riff, I bashed about with a bit of bass, and I dropped this weird trance riff into this tune, and of course my female little vocal hits. And at the end of it, I had a 124 BPM. That's the beats per minute. How many beats per minute? 124. So reasonably, it's a slow tempo now, but back in the day, that probably would have been classed as hardcore. But it's a slow tempo tune, and my house was born. And I popped this up on Christmas Eve, I think, was it this year? 26? Might have been Christmas Eve 25 rather. And it's a sort of joke I put, since I started doing this, I think I've put up a tune on Christmas Eve, and I say it's a gift to the world because it's Christmas. And I'm no fool, and perhaps I am, but I know that I'm no genius when it comes to making music, and my early attempts were terrible. And my poor old friend, I used to make him listen to my tunes just really to torture him, because he's a nice fella, and he would always try to find something nice to say about it, even though I knew it was rubbish. Anyway, I teased him, and I said, don't forget to go and listen to my gift to the world this year, and I left it at that. And a week or so later, I got a phone call from him out of the blue, and he phoned me up, and he said, that tune? And I went, yeah. He said, that's actually all right. I went, really? You think so? He said, yeah. He said, that's quite good. And I was taken aback, because blokes, I've known him 50 years. Sadly, he just recently passed suddenly from a heart attack, riding his trials bike. So it was quite traumatic. But it was the first tune that he heard from all the rubbish I've made that he actually liked. And I was quite taken aback by him taking the time to call me and say this. And then it dawned on me. I went, hang on a minute, you said that about all the other ones I made you listen to. And he went, well, yeah, but this one's all right. So that was my first tune. So My House. And I'd like you to take a listen to it and see what you think. And in the next episode, we'll look at the next track, and I'll try to explain what I was thinking and trying to get out of that track, which will be called Dirty House. Do you see where I'm going with the names now? So that's My House, Dirty House. You've got a lot of house puns to come. Anyway, thanks for listening to these words. I hope it made sense. I'm purposely keeping it short. So, and now I'm going to play My House, and hopefully I'll see you in episode 2, or as I like to call it, track 2.